Ethan Carter had always believed trust was the strongest foundation of a marriage. For 12 years, he and his wife, Claire, had built a life that looked perfect from the outside. Their home was warm, their conversations were easy, and their routines felt comforting. But lately, something had changed. Claire had become distant, guarding her phone like it contained state secrets. One quiet Thursday evening, while Ethan was reading in the living room, her phone rang. She answered with a smile, then softly said, "I'll be ready." Before hanging up, Ethan clearly heard a man's voice say, "Get ready for tonight." Claire's smile lingered, as if Ethan wasn't even sitting there. Claire slipped the phone into her pocket and walked upstairs without offering any explanation. Ethan forced himself to stay calm, though every instinct screamed that something was terribly wrong. Minutes later, he quietly checked the security app connected to the family driveway cameras. He watched Claire pace in the bedroom while texting someone repeatedly. She even laughed at one message. The woman who once shared every little detail with him now looked like a stranger living under his roof. Ethan knew confronting her immediately would only lead to excuses. Instead, he decided to remain silent and let the truth reveal itself naturally, no matter how painful it became. Around 7 o'clock, Claire appeared downstairs wearing an elegant black dress Ethan had bought for their anniversary, but had never seen her wear. She barely looked at him while applying perfume near the hallway mirror. "I'm having dinner with some friends," she said casually before grabbing her purse. Ethan simply nodded and wished her a pleasant evening. She seemed almost relieved that he wasn't asking questions. Through the front window, Ethan watched a sleek black luxury sedan stop outside. Claire climbed inside without hesitation, smiling brightly at the driver. As the car disappeared around the corner, Ethan picked up his keys and quietly followed from a safe distance. The sedan eventually stopped outside one of the city's most exclusive hotels. Ethan parked across the street and observed carefully. Claire stepped out, and the driver, a sharply dressed businessman in his 40s, greeted her with a familiar hug. They entered the hotel together, while laughing about something Ethan couldn't hear. His heart sank, but he resisted the urge to storm inside. Instead, he remembered something unusual from weeks earlier. His close friend Marcus, a private investigator, had warned him that appearances often hid deeper stories. Ethan called Marcus immediately. Within minutes, Marcus agreed to help uncover the entire truth before Ethan made any irreversible decision fueled by emotion. While Marcus worked his contacts inside the hotel, Ethan waited in his car, battling anger and heartbreak. Nearly an hour later, Marcus returned with surprising information. Claire and the businessman weren't alone. They had joined several investors in a private conference room rather than a hotel suite. Curious, Marcus discreetly obtained the guest list. The businessman was Victor Lawson, CEO of a real estate company that had recently purchased Ethan's struggling employer. Suddenly, Ethan realized this meeting might involve more than betrayal, yet something still felt suspicious. Why had Claire hidden everything? Why had Victor personally called her? And why had she smiled as though Ethan no longer mattered? Determined to learn more, Ethan remembered that Claire had recently started volunteering as an accountant for a local charity. Using connections at his office, he discovered that Victor's company had quietly donated millions to the same organization. Marcus dug even deeper and uncovered encrypted emails exchanged between Victor's assistant and someone using an anonymous account. Those emails mentioned confidential financial documents, hidden transfers, and mysterious meetings scheduled for that very night. Ethan's instincts shifted. Perhaps Claire wasn't having an affair after all. Perhaps she had become entangled in something much more dangerous. Something involving fraud that could destroy countless innocent families if exposed. Unable to ignore the growing mystery, Ethan entered the hotel disguised among guests attending another corporate event. From a nearby hallway, he caught fragmented conversation through the conference room door. Victor praised Claire for keeping certain financial records hidden until the right moment. Claire's response was calm but firm. "Once everything is signed tonight, there's no turning back," she said. Ethan's pulse raced. Those words sounded nothing like an innocent business discussion. Before he could hear another sentence, the conference room door suddenly opened, forcing him to disappear into the crowd. As Victor stepped outside, Ethan realized the night had become far more dangerous than he ever imagined. Ethan slipped into a nearby corridor before Victor noticed him. His heart pounded, but his mind stayed focused. A few minutes later, Marcus called with a breakthrough. He had traced the anonymous emails and discovered they weren't sent by Claire at all. Someone inside Victor's company had been impersonating her to create a false trail. The hidden financial records involved millions of dollars being moved through shell companies before innocent employees lost their pensions. Ethan suddenly understood that Claire's presence at the hotel might not be part of crime. It might be part of exposing it. Even so, he needed proof before trusting anyone completely. Inside the conference room, the atmosphere grew tense. Victor placed a thick contract on the table and smiled confidently. "Sign it, and everything disappears," he said. Claire slowly opened a folder and looked directly into his eyes. Instead of signing, she pushed another envelope across the table. "Actually," she replied, "everything begins tonight." Victor opened the envelope and instantly turned pale. Inside were copies of bank transfers, secret recordings, and signed statements from former employees. Before anyone could react, several plainclothes investigators entered the room. The smiles vanished from every guilty face as the operation they believed was hidden began collapsing around them. Victor jumped from his chair and tried to destroy the evidence, but it was too late. Officers seized laptops, phones, and financial documents while reading legal warrants aloud. Several executives attempted to escape through another exit, only to find additional investigators waiting outside. Ethan watched the entire scene from the hallway, unable to believe what he was witnessing. Claire remained calm despite the chaos surrounding her. She had secretly worked with investigators for months after discovering irregularities during her volunteer accounting work. To protect the investigation, she had told no one, not even Ethan, knowing that a single mistake could have ruined everything before the authorities were ready. When the investigators finally escorted Victor away in handcuffs, Claire stepped into the hallway and froze as she saw Ethan standing there. For several silent seconds, neither of them spoke. Tears filled her eyes before she quietly admitted that she had wanted to tell him everything countless times. However, federal investigators had required complete secrecy because Victor's organization had connections capable of leaking information. Ethan struggled with conflicting emotions. He still remembered the mysterious phone call and the smile that had shattered his trust. Claire gently explained that smiling during the call had been an act designed to convince Victor that she remained completely under his control. The following morning, national news outlets exploded with reports about Victor's arrest and the collapse of one of the region's largest financial fraud schemes. Authorities recovered millions of dollars that would now be returned to victims who had unknowingly lost their retirement savings. Claire's bravery remained confidential for security reasons, but investigators privately thanked her for risking everything to expose the corruption. Ethan realized how easily appearances had nearly destroyed his marriage. Had he confronted her in anger that evening, Victor might have escaped before investigators could complete their operation. Sometimes the truth hid beneath actions that looked impossible to understand from the outside. Several weeks later, life slowly returned to normal, though neither Ethan nor Claire pretended the painful misunderstanding had never happened. Instead, they chose honesty over assumptions and difficult conversations over silent suspicion. Claire admitted that keeping such an enormous secret had been the hardest burden she had ever carried. Ethan admitted that allowing doubt to grow without asking questions had nearly consumed him. Together they rebuilt the trust that had been shaken, not through dramatic promises, but through everyday actions that proved their commitment. The experience changed both of them forever, leaving behind wisdom earned through fear, patience, and painful uncertainty. Months later, Ethan stood on the same front porch where he had watched Claire leave that unforgettable night. The memory still lingered, but it no longer carried bitterness. Instead, it reminded him that the most shocking moments rarely reveal the whole story. A single phone call, a mysterious smile, and one quiet goodbye had seemed like the beginning of betrayal. In reality, they had been the opening chapter of a dangerous mission that brought powerful criminals to justice. The night Ethan believed he had lost everything became the night the truth finally walked through the door, and neither he nor Claire would ever underestimate the power of trust again.